To conclude the summit programming, we have a special presentation by GSK and ART Health Solutions on workplace innovations that drive health, performance, and resilience. Because creating sustainable systems also means supporting the people who power them. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, James Fretton, Program Director at GSK, and Dr. Josh Jackman, Chief Operations Officer at ART Health Solutions.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for sticking around and for joining us in this session. You may well recognize that Chris has already kind of introduced us. James and I are some of those with the funny accents, so we're come over from across the pond today and delighted to be here, but not only delighted to be here, but obviously a special slot to close the summit. But with that slot, we are very acutely aware that we are the one thing standing between you guys and your champagne, so we will do our best to bring the energy and hopefully some inspiration into those networking drinks. So the session today is all about showcasing GSK's case study for how they've aimed to build one of the world's healthiest workplaces. And just to introduce myself, my name's Josh Jackman. I'm COO at a company called ART Health Solutions. As a quick background to myself, I stem from 3 different areas really. So the first being academia, where I studied for a PhD in exercise physiology. I then transitioned that into the world of elite sport, helping elite athletes to feel and perform at their best through scientific support. And then I applied those different areas of science, research, but with a focus on people into the work that I now do with ART. And that's really about our specialism in helping organizations understand how the workplace impacts on people. I'm delighted to be joined on stage by James Fretton from GSK. James.
Brilliant, thank you, Josh. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Fretton. I'm the Program Director for the new HQ delivery of that program. So working alongside Chris Higgins in driving forward building one of the world's healthiest workplaces. So before GSK, I worked for Transport for London, the transport authority that runs all the tubes, the trains and the buses. And I was leading their program to deliver 20,000 homes on their sites across London at 50% affordable housing. But more generally, my experience is leading and delivering large, complex real estate programs.
So we know that the session today is all about showcasing this one-of-a-kind case study. And here are some of the key takeaways that we hope that you can leave with. But what I want to touch on is just some of the threads that really tie this back to the element of social sustainability. So as you can see from the first one, we talk about a holistic approach. And the key to that is really driving that link between well-being and performance. The second being, we'll hopefully showcase some of the fundamental metrics that we've driven through this partnership that have enabled that ambition of world's healthiest to be achieved and also to drive people at the heart of that decision making. And then the last one to hear and showcase some of the different initiatives and innovations that GSK have deployed that really have the employee health, well-being and sustainability at the heart of it. So showcasing this as a case study of how corporate real estate can really drive social sustainability. But before we dig into all of that, James, if you could just take us back to the start, where did all of this come from and what did World's Healthiest really mean to GSK?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Josh. So just a little bit of background around really the business case in driving forward GSK moving from its campus location out in southwest London in Brentford into a central London location. And really there were 2 main drivers for that. The first driver was the divestment of GSK's consumer healthcare arm away from GSK into a new business called Haleon, which meant that you had a HQ that was originally built for 6,000 people, which was 660,000 square foot of office space, which is now only homing 3,000 people. The second aspect to this, which really drove that business case, was something we'll be all very familiar with, which is the evolution of the office space post-COVID, and really looking at the different behaviors that we were seeing as a result of that. So what GSK were doing was really driving the performance of their sites and driving the performance of the people in those spaces. And what we did is we developed our smart working design standards, which was Smart Working 4. And we started to deploy that across the globe in sites such as Durham, in Philadelphia, and in Bangalore. And so what we did is once we had deployed that, we were starting to see changes in behaviors. And then how did we apply that into a new HQ? So that then transfers me on into this ambition to create one of the world's healthiest workplaces. So Chris touched upon this a little bit earlier around GSK's strategy to help through their products and through their drugs, 2.5 billion people by the end of the decade. And so if you're able to help support those employees who are working towards that strategy, the health, the well-being, their productivity, then you're providing a tangible link into that wider strategy. So underpinning our ambition to create one of the world's healthiest workplace, we have our 5 mission statements. And these were our guiding principles through everything that we did throughout the program. The first one on there is around creating places for people to get ahead of disease together, to create spaces for people to socialize and collaborate. The second one there is around creating inclusive environments for all. So Chris touched upon this a little bit earlier, and this was working with different employee resource groups to understand the requirements of different types of people and how they're able to thrive in place. We wanted people to go into the building to thrive and to come away healthier. The third aspect to this touched upon technology. And I suppose there's 2 main parts to this. The first part is around providing a seamless technology experience for people. And what do I mean by that? Well, just a simple example of that is being able to go into one of our meeting rooms, click one button, and then you're instantly connected on Teams and being able to collaborate with people across the globe. The second element of that is how do you put technology into the building to help support people make informed decisions on where they best work, and it help them then drive their performance in that space and their health and well-being. The fourth element touched upon sustainability, which I'll delve into later on in this slide deck. And this is really driving forward what is GSK's purpose within that location? How are they interacting with the local community, and how can that space support that? And the fifth one in there is creating a destination that people want to go to. And that drive into central London, in the London Borough of Camden, being in the Knowledge Quarter, being close to those London universities, and creating a space where people want to go to make sure that we're attracting and retaining talent. So with that, I'll pass on to Josh to talk a little bit more about workplace science and that data-driven approach to creating one of the world's healthiest workplaces.
So the first question is, what is workplace science? Well, workplace science is an evidence-based approach to measure and understand the impact of the workplace on employee health, well-being, and performance. And the reason why this sort of program is important is because the world has changed. You know, people talk about the future. I was talking to Liam Bates outside, who was saying, you know, clients really want this, but the future is now. This sort of program can help, you know, do some of the things that we've got on the screen there, but it's really about using people-centric data to inform workplace conversations in a way that really drives things forward for the health of people and enabling employees to thrive. So we talk about some of these elements, but really it's about driving this into real estate decision-making and help drive social sustainability. And this is important because the data that informs things like stress, cognitive performance, and people's health has helped GSK inform those decisions around world's healthiest. So when we talk about social sustainability, you know, this is not just talking the talk, this is, you know, walking the walk, and we can demonstrate that today. But when we talk about the new HQ, it's important to just go back to the start of the journey. And actually, this took place back in 2018 with the evolution of what was called the Workplace Performance Hub. The Workplace Performance Hub was a proof of concept pilot space to test new and emerging innovations to help GSK develop future-leading workplace design standards. The space was kitted out with a variety of different workplace technologies, different ways of working, and future-leading innovations. But the key was that it was really about driving as much productivity and performance into every square foot of that space. The challenge that GSK had was that actually, you know, how do they go about measuring and evidencing how those different innovations are impacting on the most important thing within that space, and that's the people. So this is where the partnership with ART was born, and we were able to leverage our specialism in measuring just that to really drive what we now know as workplace science. Over the next year, 60 people occupied that space, and we were able to influence things in the space to understand how workplace design was influencing cognitive performance, health, and well-being. And the results were fascinating. It really demonstrated the value of providing spaces where people and teams can thrive. But the one challenge that came out at the end of that project was, okay, that's brilliant for 60 people in the UK, but what does that mean for GSK's 3,000 strong headcount at their global HQ, or what about the rest of their workforce across their global portfolio? So this is where the learnings from this project were taken into the global workplace design standards, and then we were able to test and validate those standards at different sites around the globe for cultural and geographical differences. What this program also kick-started was the evolution of workplace science sprints. So Workplace Science Sprints is an evergreen program to test and learn and work with an enterprise-wide network of stakeholders to really provide a continual feedback loop and enable GSK to stay at the forefront of workplace design and innovation. And what this has meant for the new HQ is that these type of test and learn environments have enabled information to drive the design, the fit out, and the change process within the new HQ and keep people at the forefront of that decision making. So you can see a selection of different sprints that we've conducted, which is only a sample from the total amount, but just to showcase some of these examples. So for example, you can see the Moosonic soundscapes. So we know that office noise in the office is one of the biggest distractions to employees. And actually by implementing a sound masking system that plays biophilic sounds that are matched with visuals on screens, actually this can mitigate the severity of those noise distractions. But this testing was able to go one step beyond that and actually demonstrate an 8% increase in people's decision making with a mid to high masking sound condition. So not just providing the business case and supporting the use of this intervention generally, but actually also being able to inform the operational delivery. And then one of the really interesting findings around the curve monitor use, so a new and emerging technology that was coming to the forefront, and actually being able to compare the use of a curve monitor versus a single standard screen. And actually we found that employees' working memory was improved by 17% with the use of the curve monitors, helping inform the design decisions that were going into the new HQ. So what these elements have enabled, and you can see some of the data there, is to really drive the people-centric data into that decision-making process. But that's only an element of the change management process. So James, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So one of our biggest lessons learned on this program is that you cannot invest heavily enough into a change management program. And so as part of that, one of the things that we carved out a space at GSK House, the old HQ. And essentially what we did with that space is we used to test different elements that we were going to put into the design of the new HQ. So what we learned is if you give people free coffee, they'll absolutely come to the space and use it. And so what we did is we tested everything in that space from different types of furniture, meeting room technology, task lamps, screens, ergonomic chairs, and we gave the people the opportunity to come and vote on what were their favorite aspects of that. So gave people tokens, gave them free coffee, they came into the space, they used the space, they tested the different areas, and that was helping us to inform the design and what we were going to put into the HQ. What the employees didn't know as well is that we had sensors in that space. So we were able to understand where people were sat for periods of time, why they were sat there for a longer period of time, which areas of the spaces were more well used. And again, that was all part of our process in helping to inform the design of that space, as well as bringing people along that journey with what we were trying to achieve.
And then the design space was a space to really educate employees on the decisions that were being made. So allowing them to actually test what was going into the new HQ before they even set foot there. And the beneficial impact of this is that actually it was not just informing employees what decisions were being made, but crucially the why. So as you can see, on the right-hand side, we were able to showcase, for example, with the curve monitors here, that actually the reasons why these innovations were going into the new HQ was driven by a benefit that would actually support the employees themselves. So we know that people are naturally resistant to change, but actually being able to bring people on that journey enabled not just bodies to move to the new HQ, but also hearts and minds as well. And so that leads us on to our workplace science project that we delivered with the new HQ. So James talked about the ambition, which was bold. It was to create one of the world's healthiest workplaces. And the key thing around that is, well, how are we going to test and measure that? So this is where, again, the measurement of people came to the forefront, and we utilized the workplace science methodology to enable a pre to post comparison with a two-phase approach that was conducted across GSK's old HQ and then a repeat assessment post-occupancy in their new HQ. As you can see, the 12-week project was mapped onto the mission statement that James talked about earlier. So this is drawing a direct link back to that overarching strategy. And across that 12 weeks in phase 1, we amassed over 40,000 data points. So that included over 6,500 cognitive performance tasks completed, over 12,000 nights worth of sleep, over 20,000 days worth of steps, and over 800 of the theme surveys. So what this enabled was not only an incredibly rich and comprehensive data set for analysis, but it also enabled a world's first. So this became the largest single office assessment of an office move ever completed to date, with up to nearly 500 of GSK's employees involved. Now, I've talked about phase 1, yeah. So we talk about phase one. We've actually just completed phase two, so it's too soon to talk through that data, but we can talk through some of the findings from the first phase, just to give you a snippet and to sort of drive where this full case study might go in the coming months that we'll be able to share. So we saw that actually at GSK House, employees were performing quite favourably from an activity perspective, with over 9,000 steps completed per day. Now it's going to be super interesting to see how this compares to the new HQ, with innovations driven around the active commute network and the physical design of the workplace, which James will talk about, where we see these metrics driven further. We knew that stress actually peaked at the beginning and the end of the day, and when we dug deeper into that, we could see that this was related to employees' commutes, where people were actually more stressed when they're commuting by car versus when they actively commuted. Now, the move has meant that actually employees will go from the outskirts of London into central London, so commuting patterns are going to change. But a huge amount of work has been put into understanding this, and James will again talk about some of the partnerships that have helped to really drive to try and mitigate this element of stress. And again, it'll be super interesting to see how that data is going to change with the new HQ. And then again, you can see some of the other elements around sleep quality and cognitive performance as some of the key health metrics. And then when we talk about informing workplace design, we know that acoustics and lighting, and this data helps supplement some of the sprints that we talked about on one of the previous slides and provide the rationale for that type of testing. So the innovations around the sound masking and the circadian lighting system are hopefully going to drive positive influences to this type of data. And then touching on the smart technology and variety of workstations, again, you can see the data here. And this leads me into hand over back to James to talk about some of the elements of the smart technology that's been implemented, the variety of workstations, and many other innovations that are into the new HQ, all with the basis of trying to drive those key health metrics for employees.
Brilliant, thank you, Josh. So we've talked about the strategy, the ambition, the data-driven approach, workplace science. Now what I want to do now is bring it all to life and showcase to you some of the different aspects of the HQ. So as I said on the slide there, we've got 15 different types of work settings for the HQ. So long gone are the days of turning up to the office and sat at your desk all day. What we're trying to do is encourage people to use the different types of work settings and the different spaces depending on the requirement of their day. So whether they're coming into the office to collaborate, whether they're coming to have a one-to-one with their managers to sit on the terrace area, whether they need to take a confidential call. There's 15 different types of work settings across the HQ that we're encouraging people to use to make sure they're using it to their best advantage. The other aspect to this is on the right-hand side of the slide here, you can see one of our meeting rooms. So a lot of work went into the design of the meeting rooms and the spaces to make sure that they support both accessibility and inclusivity. So the way they're set up, the furniture is set up and designed in a way that it supports face-to-face conversations, but also to enable collaboration on Teams. So the curvature of the meeting room table enables you to have face-to-face interaction, but also if you're on Teams, you're stepped in a way that everyone can be seen on the camera. So after talking a little bit about work settings, I want to touch upon some of the technology that we have in the HQ that, again, is helping to support employees to make informed decisions on where there is best place to work. So we collect a lot of data at the HQ. We've got a lot of sensors, and those sensors are looking at things such as pollen, VOCs, carbon dioxide, temperature, lighting, humidity. And we provide all that data to employees through a variety of different mechanisms. One of those ways is through the app that employees use to get building access to book meeting rooms. It has all those details and provides them with all that data. So if you're looking for a quieter area of the office, you can use the tool to be able to do that. If you need an area of the office that's got reduced lighting zones, all that data is available for employees to use to make sure that they're providing the right spaces for them to work best. The other aspect that we are looking at is in terms of the wayfinding screens at the HQ. All that information is on the wayfinding screens. And you'll see on the slide here, there's on the meeting room booking panel, information on there around the CO2 levels of the room, the temperature levels. All that data is informing people who are using that room. So if CO2 levels get too high in that room, it will alert people in that room to perhaps go out and take a break. It'll also connect to the building management system, and that will provide an alert which will send information back to the HVAC system to then pump in more fresh air to help support people who are using those spaces. So I'm going to touch upon some of the other areas now of the HQ, and one of the key factors in the location and the site that we chose was the beautiful terrace areas that we have. despite what people think, there is a little bit of fresh air in London. So on the few days that is sunny in London, we're encouraging people to go out on those terrace spaces. We run stretch sessions with our wellness managers and our fitness managers for teams out on those spaces. We also have allotments on those spaces, so people go out in the afternoon and do some gardening sessions with their teams. In the winter, we provide blankets for people to use those spaces, which are pretty well used, you might not be surprised to hear. So I've touched upon terrace spaces. Now, what I want to also touch upon is some of the furniture in those terrace spaces and our partnership with Raw. So Raw is a company that provides job opportunities for people who have perhaps suffered from addiction or low self-esteem. And this is part of our social responsibility in terms of utilizing businesses to help promote the use of these different spaces. And so Raw Furniture produced all the furniture which is out on the terrace spaces. And again, it was linking into how we as GSK can promote skills, training and employment within the local environment. So the second aspect of furniture that I want to touch upon is around circularity and leasing. So as you can imagine, in our old HQ, which was 660,000 square foot, there was a lot of furniture. We were there for 22 years. So we set the bold ambition to make sure that 0 tons of that furniture or zero amount went into landfill. And we partnered with a furniture company to help support that. So 930 tons of furniture was sold or donated for reuse, and that was given to local charities or local schools, and 193 tons was recycled. The second aspect of this is our leasing. So I don't own any of the furniture in the HQ, we lease it. And this provides 2 benefits. The first benefit is part of that leasing mechanism, I have a churn. So I'm able to adapt and reuse and change the different spaces within the HQ as much as I want, depending on the different changes in behaviors. The second aspect to this is around the circularity and sustainability piece. It means that traditionally you buy furniture and it sits on your asset register, it depreciates, after 4 or 5 years it looks a bit tired and you get rid of it. But actually what we're doing as part of our leasing mechanism is that furniture will perhaps go to another site, it might be upcycled, or it might be given to another business. So you're extending the life of that asset. So what I now want to do is to touch upon some of the feature floors within the HQ. So one of my favorite floors is the wellness floor. So traditionally in an office, you might find the gym right in the basement. We set the bold ambition of having it on our upper floors with that ambition that health and well-being then flows through the rest of the building. That came with its challenges, though. With people running on running machines and dropping weights, you get reverberation through the rest of the building. On our wellness floor, we have Europe's largest active dampening system, which effectively acts like a noise-cancelling headphone. So if you drop a weight, it stops the reverberation through the rest of the building. Our wellness floor, we have 3,000 people at the HQ. 1,500 people have signed up to the wellness floor through our Techno Gym app. We have a traditional gym. We have an active studio. We have sort of Pilates, meditation studio. We also have treatment rooms on there and 2 multi-faith rooms. So moving on from wellness and touching upon a little bit around active commute, Josh touched upon the benefits of active commute and how important it is for well-being and for reducing stress. So we have active commute facilities that help support employees who perhaps want to just jog into the office, walk into the office, or cycle into the office, and 235 spaces for bikes. And this leads me on to our partnership with Transport for London, which was a first of its kind within London. So Transport for London joined GSK early on in that change management process. One of the key things that we're hearing through the consultation process that people were worried about their commute. So most people drove to the old HQ out in Brentford. They were now getting on buses, on tubes. And so TfL came in and provided one-to-one support for employees to help them with that change. They provided support on perhaps people who wanted quieter routes into the office or had accessibility to requirements to make sure that journey was as smooth as possible and to reduce stress before you enter into the HQ. They also provided information on different types of walking routes and cycling routes as part of our ambition to help promote the active commute. So just moving on to the next slide, if you please, Josh. So Josh touched upon soundscaping, so I'm not going to touch upon that because I can see the clock, which is slowly ticking down. I'll touch upon biophilia, though. So we know from the data that real-life plants help reduce stress. And we looked at the science behind how different shaped leaves can actually reduce stress as well. So you have an abundance of biophilia across the building. And that nicely brings me through to the final element of the presentation and my favorite aspect of our HQ. And this is split into two. The first part is the Orangery, which is our restaurant. So we made the decision not to take off one of our upper floors beyond the GSK security line for just GSK employees. We took the decision to open up a restaurant up to the public in our ground floor. And what that does is not only does that revenue from that public restaurant help subsidize the rest of the building, but it creates an engaging place along one of London's busiest streets for not only GSK employees to use, but also the local community. It provides a space for friends and family of GSK employees to sit and wait and have a drink or have some dinner before they head off into the theatre district. And it is a beautiful, beautiful space. The second aspect to this is our vertical farm. So we have Europe's largest indoor vertical farm, which is feeding the entirety of the building. The produce that we produce through that vertical farm, whether it's basil, whether it's parsley, whether it's lettuce, is 5 times more nutritious than what you would get in a supermarket. And the reason because of that is because it's grown in a controlled environment. We control the amount of water, the pH of the nutrients that it's getting. And so all of that produce goes into the restaurant and it goes into all the fridges across the rest of the HQ. Our urban farm is 90% more sustainable and uses 90% less water than traditional farming methods as well. So this is an important aspect of our social sustainability and what we're trying to achieve at HQ. So we have an ambitious 150 local community visits that are planned in for the next year. And so what we're doing is we're bringing in local groups, local schools, charities, universities, to bring them into the space, to teach them about sustainable urban farming, to teach them about how important nutrients is within food. And so that space is really how we're interacting with Camden, interacting with the local environment, to bring them into that space and really educate people on healthy food and just bring them into that space. So this is really exciting for us, and a selfless plug. We have a beautiful chef's table down in the vertical farm, so if you visit theorangery.tcr, you can come over to London, you can book the space and have some of our wonderful food. So with that, I'll pass over to Josh with some closing remarks.
So, as I mentioned, the Workplace Science Phase 2 project has literally, as of last week, completed. So the next few weeks and months are going to be about crunching the numbers and being able to put the evidence behind the claim for world's healthiest. But we've got on this slide that it doesn't stop here. And that's true because the aim now is to actually take these learnings from this best-in-class blueprint and be able to scale these across GSK's portfolio to really drive equity in the health element. And James, I know you can talk a bit more about the ref strategy on that.
Absolutely. So what we have done with the HQ will be our template. So we will have built the world's healthiest workplace. We have done, and now what the plan is to take what we've done there and do that across the rest of our commercial office portfolio to build one of the world's healthiest portfolios. And the way that we're going to measure that and do that is through our partnership with Well. And that is going to be our main measure for how we're going to do that globally across the rest of the commercial office portfolio. So with that,
what a way to end. So I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is James and I like to speak, so we've run out of time for any questions. But the good news is James and I like to speak. So if anyone does want to come and chat to us at any point or connect via the QR code that will take to our LinkedIn, we'd be more than happy to chat and to speak any more on this. So last thing to say is just thank you so much for listening and obviously wishing everyone a very, very happy holiday period. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James and Josh, for an incredible and so insightful presentation. Thank you to all our speakers, moderators, participants, sponsors, and supporting organizations, and most importantly, for all of you for joining us today, a Friday in December in New York City, right before holidays and probably right before your holiday parties of your companies. So thanks for squeezing us in. You showed a whole new level of commitment to sustainability. As we leave today's sessions, let's not just take these insights with us. Let's turn them into actions. Whether it's advancing corporate strategies, shaping real estate practices, driving policy and regulatory changes, or innovating through sustainable finance. Each and every one of us has a role to play in supporting social sustainability, empowering a just transition. We invite you all to join us for a toast in the Riverview Room 2. Let's celebrate the progress we've made and the possibilities ahead. Thank you all.